All right, and so we are now on air. Well, hello and good morning, Northwest NWACUHO fans. My name is Shelly Clark, and I serve as your president-elect. I'm hosted at Western Oregon University, and I have the pleasure today of getting to introduce Kyle Kantz, who is an assistant director of marketing and communications at Washington State University. He is going to talk a little bit, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but he's going to talk a little bit about developing a social media brand for housing and residence life, something that I think that we're all interested and excited to hear a little bit more about. After the presentation, stick around for just a couple of updates from your Northwest NWACUHO friends, and we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming conference. Just encourage you to make sure that you are getting registered, how to get information about updates, all that sort of stuff. So, but we'll talk about that a little bit after the webinar. So anyway, with all, I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Good morning, everyone. So please bear with me as I'm doing this solo to try and get this set up. So I think I got the screen share on. All right, and we see Shelly within Shelly. And all right, I think we're good to go. Thank you for the introduction, Shelly, and good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. So my name is Kyle Kantz. I'm Assistant Director of Marketing Communications at Washington State University for our Student Affairs Unit. And one of my areas is I do the marketing communications for our housing, residence life, dining services, as well as quite a few other areas. So today's presentation is about developing a social media brand. This is something Kate had asked me to present. I've done similar presentations for their RED group or their hall director group to help them with just managing their own social media accounts. And so it was something that I'm well versed in, at least currently, and I'm happy to share with you all. So to start off, just, here's a picture of myself. That's better than looking at me in the camera. So I have 8 years of marketing communications experience. I've worked here at Washington State University for all of that in various areas of student affairs, from recreational programs to card center operations. We have an Apple store and a Starbucks on campus. I've done marketing communications for them, housing, dining, you name it. Most of our areas in student affairs I've done marketing communications for. Prior to that, I've actually worked in housing and residence life as a hall director for 3 years here at Washington State University, and during that time also served on the Northwest NWACUHO board. And so one thing to note is that a lot of what I'm talking about in my experiences today are really based in the sense of a public university. There may be some policies that are slightly different or some best practices that may be different for a private institution. So just want to get that out front for y'all that this is the scope of which I'm talking about, of what I know with a public institution and with the public, with the business sector. And the last thing, I do not know everything. Social media is a rapidly changing world that is constantly shifting. There are new platforms, new strategies, new tactics. You think you know things for one moment and it will change on you easily within a month, within 6 months. So that's why I say I don't know everything. I know what I know for right now. But part of it is just always kind of keeping tuned to what's happening in social media. My other caveat is that for a little bit of this, I am going to get a little theoretical. I am going to dredge up some history just to kind of set the stage of where we are now. So also, before I get too far, at the end, if you do have questions, you can also email me. My email address will be at the end of the presentation. It's kkantz@wsu.edu. So feel free to email me any questions you have and I will respond back. Or I can also share my phone number if you need to talk through more complex questions. So without further ado, we'll get started. So my presentation goals for today. The first is to develop a mutual understanding of branding and what it means for social media. Branding is a highly confusing topic. Most people think, oh, okay, it's a symbol, it's a mark, it's what you look like. There's a lot more to it. So I'll go into depth about that and really what it means in today's landscape. Help you gain some insight into meeting your audience. That's the key to a really successful social media account, is you got to meet your audience where they are. Review best practices for running a social media account. So not only just meeting your audience, but what are the intangibles? What are the things that you need to be doing to be successful in this business? Also understanding what are the risk factors with having a social media account. Because when you do this, you do open yourself up to risk. And as housing residence life professionals, risk management is part of what we do. So I want to share that piece with you as well. And then if there is the ability to, which I'm not 100% certain with this platform, for question and answer at the end, if there are text boxes available. If not, we'll wrap it up and probably give a few extra insights, and we'll call it a morning. Okay, so what is a brand? So historically, basically a brand is an identifying mark. It primarily was used on livestock, and it was to mark ownership of the livestock as they would be brought into market. So that way, everybody knew, head of cattle, which rancher it belonged to. But also, as it evolved, part of that was there was a standing of certain ranchers brought better beef product to market than other ranchers. And so that's initially where branding really kind of started getting its first foothold, was that it wasn't just an identifier, but it was an identifier of the quality of product. And so that is where branding initially started, when it moved from the physical act of a brand to having some sort of symbolism beyond just ownership. This continued on, and this would have been ballpark, I think it was the turn of the century, mid 1800s approximately. As products were being developed, and the one I'm going to pick on is actually Coca-Cola. When Coca-Cola hit the market, there were all different kinds of soft drinks or sodas, if you will. And so with Coca-Cola, what they did is they created their brand, a logo essentially. And its sole purpose was so that if you went to the market, to a store, to buy a soft drink, you could tell which one was a Coca-Cola product. Because at that time, bottles weren't necessarily marked. You couldn't really tell what belonged to whom, what product you were actually getting. And so they realized, hey, let's put a logo on this, so that way. And it wasn't just for business. It wasn't, reputation or anything. It was literally just so people could see, this is my product, and that they could select your product. So now from that time, the brand has evolved even further. Today's kind of landscape on a brand, it's really what your audience thinks or feels when engaging with your product or service. It's about the experience they get, how they feel. It is their perception of you. That's the best way of putting a brand out there. And so a big piece of confusion is that a lot of folks feel that brand is strictly controlled by marketing communications. It's what shows up on a poster. It's what shows up on a digital sign, on social media, in a video, in a TV ad, or it's a mark or a symbol. It's actually none of that. Really what a brand is today is the experience that they know they're going to get with your product, what they know they're going to get and what they're going to feel. And so that's been kind of the paradigm shift, because before it really was about that mark, but it's more now. It's, how do you answer the phones? How do you provide customer service? How do you respond to them, in a social media platform? What's your timeliness of that? The content that you share, how you write your web pages, the pictures you use. And so it's all about the experience. And that's really what brand has moved forward into these days, which is very, very key. And honestly, a big part of this has been shifted by social media. So how was brand applied to social media? Well, the early modeling when social media first really started going, and I'm ballparking this back to about 2000. There wasn't a lot of it on social media, but then businesses started getting on there. They created people on Facebook specifically. And the idea was that you push your brand all over the place. You throw it up in front of people. You say, here we are, look at me, look at me, look at me. And part of that was because that's how marketing and branding was done before. If you wanted to get your brand or your product, your service out there, you were buying TV airtime, you were buying movie theater ads, you were buying radio ads, newsprint ads, magazines, all of these things where you kind of there was limited content out there. And this is even before really when we were just kind of getting past the age of dial-up internet. Experiences were still mostly paper, hardcover, film. And so that's how you got out there. So folks took that same approach and just really applied that to social media. However, that has really changed in today's day and age. It's now about crowd culture. Because you can go onto a social media platform and you can self-select into the things that you're most interested in, the things you're most passionate about. And it's hard for marketers to get in front of that. And so that's what's caused this paradigm shift within branding. A good example I'm going to pick on is I'm going to go back to Coca-Cola. Back in about 2010, Coca-Cola released their platform, and it was called Coca-Cola 2020 Initiative. And it was this big social media push that they were going to do about telling stories and getting people to tell their stories and how that involves Coca-Cola. And they launched this platform, and they abandoned it within 3 years after they put in a lot of money into it initially. And a big reason for it was they used these same approaches before. They weren't targeting or meeting people where they were. They were trying to broad brush Coca-Cola across everybody and just try to do it with kind of cool graphics, trendy art styles. But the substance wasn't there. It was disconnected. People saw right through it. They saw that, oh, this is an ad. Just kind of like how for any of us, when we go to like Google and do a search, you start scrolling almost immediately as soon as you do a search, because you know that the top 3 items are going to be an ad. And we've become hardwired to do that. Well, that same effect happened, and basically Coca-Cola abandoned that initiative after 3 years because they realized it wasn't working. So what does it mean to be crowd culture? The example I'm going to pick on is Chipotle. They are a fast, casual dining platform for that specialize in Mexican cuisine. I don't know if they're everywhere out here on the West Coast, but they're in some places. Back before they had a really bad PR thing come up with the salmonella in their lettuce product, they were actually very well on the right track for this crowd culture. For those of you out there that remember, there was, oh gosh, it's probably about 5 years ago now, there was this whole social media movement about the pink slime. The pink slime was a meat-based content that was used to make burger patties, and it circulated social media networks. Well, basically at this time, there was a small subset of folks that believed in urban farming, believed in sustainable sourcing of agricultural products for food. But they were the fringe. And what Chipotle ended up doing was they took and said, you know what, we're going to take our product and we're going to put it to those folks. And we're going to have them be our carriers. And so what they did is they created a couple of short-length films. They really pushed the pink slime social media cause, but really pushed on stories of local farmers and what they get from supplying produce and product to Chipotle, to how they process it. And they did kind of this background and really hit on like the non-GMO, the all fresh, locally sourced ingredients. And it made a huge difference in their sales and their social media following. And it wasn't because they were doing that. They shifted their brand to fit with an identity within a platform of folks who were really trying to pursue this kind of Whole Foods style living, and really made that the big culture. Another example that I would pick on, and I'm going to pick because I'm a male, so I'm slightly biased on this one. I'm going to pick on Old Spice. They totally used to be very much branded the Old Navy, not the store Old Navy, but the Navy. I'm thinking of the 50s era, post-World War II style. And it was definitely targeted towards upper to middle class white males. And that was their product. And that's what they did. They rebranded themselves about 3 years ago. And for them, they picked up on the hipster culture. If you were to go and look at their product about 10 years ago versus their product packaging now, they definitely played into the hipster culture and basically pulled that section of the market into them. So that's really what products are doing nowadays with their branding, and how they apply that within social media is that they're going out on social media and finding groups that align with their values, their beliefs, and they're basically publishing content to those groups. And so they're driving business with those who they know will carry their message forward and are part of that message and see themselves in that message. And that's a very, very strong brand connection. So Now taking all that theory crafting and that piece and boiling it down to, for us as professionals in housing and residence life, well, what does that mean? So the first question I always ask, and this will be a repeated one, throughout this presentation for a nominal, many reasons, is who are you and what are your core values? Honestly, that's the biggest thing that you need to do. And it's got to be succinct, it's got to be short, and it should be something that infiltrates all levels of your organization. It should be from someone in your assignments office picking up the phone and how they speak to someone on the phone, to how your hall staff have conduct meetings in their halls. It really is, what is your core essence? How do you do business? And how do you want people to know the kind of business that you do? So that's the first thing that I ask is your social media account needs to reflect that. And so while I would love to come up with answers for all of you, I cannot actually come up with answers for all of you. I definitely help theory craft, individually, but for this presentation, it's not something I can offer. So that's the first thing to focus on, because that's where you need to be. And that's the messaging you need to be putting forth, whether it's photos, images, GIFs, just the text you write. It needs to be copacetic with those values. Is there a cultural opportunity that can be utilized? So thinking back to that Coca-Cola one, or no, the Chipotle one, sorry, is there a subset of the culture of your culture, of your students at your university, that you're like, hey, let's go out and let's get these students involved with us. Let's have them be the messengers. Let's have them be the carriers of our message, because students tend to listen to other students before they listen to the talking head administrators. So is there that opportunity? Does it exist? So something I can pick on for us with our recreational program. We run an Instagram, a Twitter, and a Facebook account for university recreation here at WSU. However, we do have one outlier that we run specifically, and that is our outdoor recreation center at Washington State University. They have a Facebook group. They found a niche that was not being well served, that is all about the outdoors, where to go, what to do, gear reviews, that wanted content, they wanted to engage, they wanted to share, they wanted to learn tips. And so we worked with them to create their own Facebook page that they actually run and operate. For our marketing team, we keep tabs on it just to check in, make sure everything's going well, and help with some quality control. But really, they are the ones who run it, and they run it very successfully. They don't use it as a marketing tool. They use it as a communications tool. They use it as a gathering point, where they can bring folks together that are in the outdoor recreational community here in Pullman. And they do an amazing job of posting content that is relevant to that group, sharing experiences, and the folks that are part of this then share their experiences they have. And so it basically has created a microculture online that has helped their branding, and they consistently fill their trips without a lot of other marketing or communication support. They do most of that through their social media account, and they are very successful at filling their trips. Example I like to point to of they knew what their culture was. They had folks that were well versed in that culture posting to it, and they went for it and they got it. So, which leads me to that last question. The other thing to consider is, how does your organization engage with, or how is it going to be engaged by your audience? Another example I'll pick on here at Washington State University, we have a parent Facebook page, which has had its own challenges, but it's been a great tool for basically all parents jump into this Facebook page if they have a Facebook account. And it's a place where they can ask questions, get community support. And there are some challenges that happen, but it is an amazing tool for them to help each other out with answering questions, or for our team, whether it's, for those of you who know Bob Tattersall, our director of housing, he's basically a celebrity on this channel because people will post a housing question, he jumps in there right away and answers it and gets back to them. And so, like for Bob, he has a ton of street credit on this account, and a lot of folks trust him and what he says. And it's an amazing tool because it's just this community of support amongst parents of WSU students. When it was first created, it was meant to be kind of a Q&A for them to interact with university staff, but it really evolved and it became a place where parents were engaging with each other. And a lot of times the faculty and staff here don't need to step in. Sometimes we do to make corrections, or if there's something kind of out of the sorts that we need to communicate out to a large group of parents, in the event of, let's say, a campus crisis, something like that. But for the most part, they self-regulate with each other. Somebody's usually had the shared experience, they share their experience, and that gets them the answer they need to move forward. So not expected, but that's really how the community operates now. So that's the strength of that platform's brand. So asking those questions before you even open it up of, how are we going to communicate and how do we expect this group to communicate? You may not be able to tag this right away, but it's good to have that sense of what are we expecting to start and where do we think it's going to evolve to? Because you can set yourself up for better success. It's just part of your goals, your planning, and your strategy for creating this account. You need to have these questions answered first. So the next thing I want to talk about was meeting your audience. This is such a key component of doing quality social media. And honestly, this is my platform here, quality work with students. So the first thing above all else, be genuine, okay? Our students are smart, our parents are smart, or our students' parents are smart, there we go, both. But they can see through when you're not being genuine. And surprisingly, they're really, really good about scrolling through histories to find some sort of contradicting point at some point in time earlier. So just be genuine. If there's a mistake, own the mistake. Apologize for it. Just be yourself, be human. And that surprisingly carries you a long ways to being good with your audience. Talk to the students you have around. Talk to your current RAs. Maybe talk to an RHA or a student government you have. And honestly, if you're looking at building something like a hall account, talk to your students who are not involved. Find out what they want, what they're looking for, how they want to engage. Because going back to that previous slide, you're going to define your purpose, your goals, your purpose. Take that and put it in front of some of your students. See how they respond. See if they have thoughts of, hey, this is really how I want this information, or hey, this is really how I want to be connected at a hall level, on a campus level. Our students are right there. They give amazing feedback, and they'll tell you what they want and how they'll utilize it. They'll also tell you, this isn't of interest of me, I'm not going to join it. So that way you're also not sinking a ton of resource, whether that's time or money, into creating an account, a channel that is destined to fail from the onset. So talk to your students, get feedback before you just launch into an account and get going. Recall your theory. I'm a big one. I love just Maslow's hierarchy of needs and thinking about that with regards to students, that where are they at and what do they need now? Okay. So thinking about just, creating your content, but if you go, let's say week 2 of the semester, you've created an account, you've done some acquisition, you have folks following you in your, let's say your hall, and you go into join this, high leadership, and define who you're going to be for your college career, week 2 of the semester, you're destined to fail. But look at, okay, maybe it's, how can we use it to promote socials? What is it that students need right now? Get out, meet other people, find their classes, and so maybe it's even having just a few sit-ins online, or having some folks that are very responsive saying, tweet at me, this question of where your class is, and I can tweet you back, where it's located. But really target students to where they're at. As we get closer to midterms, maybe it's sharing a little bit more of, here's some stress reducers, or reminders of, hey, have you checked in with your advisors yet to schedule classes for next year? And really meeting students where they are at the moment is such a key part. And any of the other student development theory, because honestly, you can apply that to a social media platform. The key is to really, everything that you want to do, moderate it with that. So that way you are acting appropriately. And the last one, and this is the question I get bombarded with a lot as a marketer, and someone who deals quite a bit in social media, is folks say, well, what platform should I choose? And how do I determine a platform? I want to be where students are at. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you. Students will always move. I think of it this way. It's kind of like a rebellion. a social media channel will open up of some sort. So Facebook was the first one, and it was great. And it was very much a kind of a closed-knit community that was mostly students. At extent, you had to have a .edu email address essentially to have a Facebook account. They expanded it, and then it started filling with like their parents, with their younger siblings. Businesses and marketers got involved. And so a good chunk of people started to go away from Facebook and went to Twitter. And then the same thing kind of happened. And folks moved into Instagram or the next platform. And so there's always going to be that shift. I mean, at one point in time, it was Snapchat. And Snapchat's still popular. But also we're seeing as marketers are infiltrating it, as administrators are infiltrating it more and more, folks are moving on to the next thing. And so the key is really to do something and do it well so that they stay. And so to really do something well, it has to be something that works for them and you. So for example, I'm going to pick on this as an administrator and as a marketer. Snapchat is tough. It is a tough nut to crack. It's a great platform. It's where a lot of students are, but it is actually really hard to engage effectively with students in mass on that platform. You can have lots of great one-on-one connections with them, but it's pretty challenging to actually do a lot of broad-based marketing or broad-based communications through a platform like that. For us, we use mostly Facebook, Twitter, Instagram here. For housing, we really just use only a Twitter account. For our dining program, we've gone back and forth with Instagram, but we primarily use Twitter. But a lot of our other areas, we use Facebook or we use all three. But it's got to be platforms that really work for them, but also works for you. It's got to be something that you can do that's easy, where you can generate the best content you can. And when I say content, by the way, because I realize I'm saying content a lot and talking to probably folks that are mostly not marketing communications, this is just the stuff that you publish, the text, the image, the GIFs, the videos, the things that you share. That's what content is, anything in that realm. So those are the keys to really just meeting your audience. And it does require a little bit of groundwork, a little bit of focus testing to really do it well. But it will save you in the long run in terms of resources spent trying to acquire it. So moving on a little bit, just want to talk a little bit about the best practices for your account. So some things to keep in mind. Target your audience. You may have multiple audiences on your account. You may have parents and students. And that's perfectly fine. But as you produce your content, just target it. You can call it out and be like, hey, students, totally check this out. Maybe not that. If you have a very student sounding voice to your account and not as much of an administrative one, because you have like students running it and talking in student language, then maybe it's, hey, everyone, here's what we're doing. And then they're saying, hey, parents, if it's something targeted towards parents. So always just target your audience. Let them know that you're talking to them because they want to feel like they're being conversed with. Okay. And our job is to provide that for them. Interact with your followers. Talk to them. If they, make a comment on a post, on a tweet, comment back to them. Even if it's just short, like, thank you, that's awesome. Or, hey, somebody's like, I got straight A's this term. Go you, give them, like a metal horns gif, you rock. But just giving them feedback, because folks post to social media because they want other folks to take notice of things both good and ill that are happening in their lives. So take the time to give that notice, interact with them. Another thing, and this is going back to the account piece, fewer and focused accounts is so much better than many and diverse accounts. Okay. If you can do one account and execute it excellently and constantly generate content, maintain interactions, have amazing strategies that account for acquisition and content, that will do so much more for you than having 3 accounts that you're not posting to consistently, that messages go unanswered for a day at a time. That's no good, because people just they think that your brand becomes flaky, that you don't really care, that you're not responsive, that it's just there for marketing purposes. So it's really key to have fewer accounts that you're doing excellent work with than accounts all over the place. Another thing, and this is with me with my marketer's hat on, but analytics, such an important tool to ensuring good quality social media. I think of it this way. You could jump into your Facebook analytics, it's insights now. See, I'm still kind of old school in what I call it. But you can look and you can see your demographic audience, when are they online? And it gives you an amazing graph for that. So you can see, okay, if I post this time, this is when I'm most likely to have most eyes seeing it, versus if I post at 6 in the morning, not gonna be terribly effective. 8 p.m. at night, really good. You can also see what days of the week are better. You can also look and you can track it down to looking at your posts for the last month and just, okay, which ones were the most effective? What do they have going on with them? And so there are a lot of powerful tools to really make you effective at this. You just have to spend a little bit of time to go in and just be keeping an eye on it. I typically go in about on a weekly basis. And we have our staff, they report and record our metrics kind of as a benchmarks piece weekly of what's happening on our accounts. So we can look for improvement areas. And also trends to know, okay, are our audience dwindling on an account? Are they going away? Are they just not using it anymore? To either make fixes or to know we need to walk away from this account to save, because we're all budget strapped, we're all time strapped. To also make sure that if one's not working, we're walking away from it and not sinking more resource into it. So use your analytics to your advantage. A few other things. When developing content, here's what we found currently for trending. GIFs or GIFs, depending on which way you say it. These are the short little animated clips that kind of loop around. Are very, very popular. They tend to get, for us, from a media standpoint, the most engagement interactions when we post content with a GIF attached to it. And this is across both Facebook and Twitter. From there, it goes to video, which video can be very challenging to do. But here's the thing. Your video quality does not need to be high production quality. It does not need to be produced by a videographer or your marketing and communications department. Make sure to talk to them before doing this to, make sure that they help you out with any challenges. But honestly, our phones are getting so much better at taking video and photo that, and also there's a level of authenticity and that genuineness of when they know it is just a photo or a video that's done via cell phone or a mobile device. So don't be afraid of that. But videos are also really tend to garner higher engagement rates. From there, it's photos, polls or engagement pieces such as that, and then just plain content where it's just text only and nothing else to it. The one that lives near the bottom, I've found in our research, and we try to stay away from this, is when you take a poster and put that as an image as a post. Because they see that and the marketing lights are going off in their head when they see an image with words on it that looks like a poster. The marketing lights are already going off and they're scrolling right past it and they're not going to stick around to look. So something to keep in mind with those kinds of images. They're nice to have because they put the information there. But typically what I found the hook is, if you give them something engaging to look at, they will stop, click on it, and look and see, well, what's this about? So an example, I use this one with a bunch of academic advisors as an example. If you have to visualize with me here because I didn't provide these images and I apologize, is you're doing a study skills workshop, okay? You have two choices of an image. You could put somebody who looks like a college student sitting in a great library with books out, kind of like maybe their hand on their head and they're gazing down at their books, and use something like that, almost like what you would see in a magazine or on a website. Or the other one is you could use something like, oh, hey, there's this open book of, I don't know, organic chemistry, and there's a kitten wearing glasses laying in this book, okay? The key is when you consider those two images, most people will stop and pause on the kitten because why is the kitten on a book? Why does the kitten have glasses on? Or, oh, the kitten is cute, which I totally would stop for that reason. But they stop for a moment. That gives their brain time to, and their eyes time to stop, look at the whole thing, and actually read the content attached to it. If it's something they already expect, oh, it's somebody studying in the library, well, they think they know what it is, and they keep scrolling through. And we all do this when we browse through our social media accounts. So the key is to create something that makes them give pause for a moment. Update constantly and consistently. Here's kind of to give you a benchmark for what we do. On Twitter, for example, I expect my staff to post at least 10 times organic-based content about, let's say, dining services, at least 10 times a week, which includes going out to a dining center, snapping a photo of a chef holding a dish and being like, sweet, fish is for dinner. And it's really tasty. A little bit more finesse than that, but I expect that kind of organic content, or telling some of our story, doing features on student managers, that they're out and gaining that kind of organic content, and that is happening at least 10 times a week. And then ongoingly, I'm expecting them to be retweeting content that is relevant to dining services here. And it may be from other universities, it may be from other social media accounts here at Washington State University. But I expect, at least on Twitter, 10 times a week, easily. That's minimum. Maximum, honestly, with Twitter, you can probably go up to 20 times a week and still be fine. Facebook, it's a little bit more moderated. You typically want to do, we try to do minimum is 5 times a week, but honestly, you could go about 5 to 10 and be okay. The key is just to look at making sure that you keep everything separated, so that you're not making one post on Facebook and then 45 minutes later making your second post of the day. That's some pretty bad form. So spacing it out a little bit. Another best practice, and this is one I'm happy to share if you email me and you're interested in learning more, is having an acquisition, content, and operations plan. So acquisition, how are you going to get people to follow you? Are you going to be spending money in acquisition ads? That is something that we do as our acquisition plan. Is during our summer orientation sessions, we sink money into all of our social media accounts. And part of what you can do with a lot of these is you can limit it to certain demographics. I want to target people 17 to 25 within 5 miles of Pullman, Washington. And if they tag WSU, Go Cougs, anything like that, I want them to see this ad. And then I'll set a budget for $200 for over a 3-day period. So we do that with a lot of our accounts to ensure that as new students are coming here to campus, we're getting them into our fold early. And that's done pretty well for us. Per account, we usually get at least about 1,000 a year just through that alone, if not more. So, and that's just during our summer orientation programs. So that's part of our acquisition strategy that we utilize. A content strategy, this is basically just laying out a calendar of what are you going to post each week? What are your themes going to be? What is your primary content? Like, what are the things like active campaigns, programs, events that are happening? Getting that information down on paper. But then also, what are some of the ongoings, the things of, hey, have you checked this out, that aren't necessarily time pertinent, but maybe useful information or useful content to share. And then the last part is an operations plan. Going back to the content plan. We do a content plan basically on a turn-by-turn basis. And we basically fill it out every week of, here's what the primary content for the week is, here's secondary content, here's ongoing content. And if we have any special notes we need to make, we put that to the right. I'm more than happy to share this document out with folks if they ask for it, of what we use in our recent plans, but it helps with managing it for yourself, or if you're working with others to manage it, because then they know where they need to be focusing their energies and attention with their posting and sharing. And then the last part is an operations plan. What I call my hit by the bus plan. Since most social media accounts are tailored to one person, what happens if you're no longer there? And I pick on this specifically for RDs and hall directors. If you open up an account for your hall, one of the things is that you do have students that return to your hall every year. There are some number of students that may return to your hall that may already be invested. Well, the key is to keep that investment going. The challenge is that if you move positions, move to a new hall, take a new position, that account basically shrivels up and dies, but yet it's still being held. And so the operations plan is a little bit more of the, okay, where are all the passwords? Who's going to keep them? Who has access now? How are we going to transition access if in the event of a vacancy, a building shift, if you need to delegate access out to maybe one of your student leaders? What do those operations look like? And part of this would be, what are our best practices? What are our brand standards? What tone are we posting in? Are we posting in a student voice, an administrator voice? So just kind of how you're going to run this account. That's really what the operations plan is. And then the last thing, and this is becoming more and more popular, and this is adding a little bit more to the genuine aspect of things, is what are called account takeovers, where you have someone you trust, but who is not affiliated with you. So an example I would say is maybe it's you have a residence life account, okay? And it's typically run by maybe like, let's say one of your RDs or an area coordinator on your team. But perhaps while you're doing RA recruitment, recruiting RAs for the following year, have the account taken over by one of your RAs. And maybe the focus for that week is for them just to share their job and what they're doing. Granted, not taking photos of residents or taking a photo mid-incident with the police there, that's not so cool and is very, very bad form. But talking with them and having them actually take over the account and kind of the week in the life of being an RA, to give that experience and really show kind of that peek behind the curtain. You can do things like that and they go over very, very well. And it lends itself to that authenticity of your accounts. So these are just a few best practices, and there are many, many more out there. But we'll continue on for now because we have a few other things to talk about. So the last item, and this is the kind of the risk management piece of this, but what are those risks that can come? Because it is a big thing. First thing I'll tell you, expect your account to become a communications tool, and it may not be who you expect. Okay. One of the things that's great and challenging, I'm going to pick on dining for us. It is a place where if folks have complaints, they direct message us on Twitter. Good God. It's morning and I haven't had my coffee yet. They direct message us and we respond back to them and we get it to the right hands of the general manager of the dining operation that they maybe had a poor experience at. And we get back to them. And so sometimes it's that communications tool that they're using. And that's perfectly fine. And it's actually a really great way to use it. So just be wary that it will be a communications tool as well as an extension of who you are and promoting maybe an event or an activity that you're doing. The communication cycle for your area will become 24/7 and care needs to be taken during crisis situations. So these days we have a 24/7 news cycle. Things are happening at all hours. It's not when you turn on the news in the morning at 6 a.m. you get, okay, here's what happened overnight. And, at home, you watch it before you go to bed at 10 p.m. Here's what happened during the day today. Or it's the daily published paper. No, you can get results. You can find out what's happening in the world at any moment, anytime, anywhere in the world, which is a challenge, especially for communicators like myself when incidents or things come up. So here are some things to know. Really good social media accounts are responsive. They get back quickly. The best ones within 5 minutes during business hours, and typically during off business hours and weekends, they still try to get back within a day or by the start of that next day, which is a challenge and is not necessarily possible with the resources we have. So I'm speaking from the industry side of it. However, it's good to be aware and to make a plan to, hey, let's check the account every morning. See if anybody sent us a message from late night. Let's check the account at the end of the business day before we close up shop. If you have student staff that are a part of it, are they checking it during off hours, maybe while they're doing a desk shift? Things like that. So that way it's being responded to. The second half of this is that during crisis situations, please, before this becomes a thing, connect with your area's crisis communications expert, okay? And see what the plan is. Honestly, what I would tell you just off the top, don't post anything during a crisis situation to your social media account. That information should be coming from your public information officer of your university and through formal channels because it can get really sticky. We had a situation come up here at WSU about 4 years ago where the university president had a meeting with some of the student leaders and let them know that they were going to be closing campus the next day because the snowfall was getting significant. Well, before the communications plan could get placed for the larger community or even communicate to faculty and staff, the students went directly onto their social media account and posted, hey, classes are canceled tomorrow, which caused a pretty significant uproar and a communications nightmare. So during these kinds of situations, your best bet is to hold, get in contact with that public information officer, and really put it to them to make the next moves. So, and when in doubt, always check with a supervisor before you post something. Even if it's something in your hall like, hey, the water is offline and it's not working. Take a few moments, maybe call your director of housing operations and just check and say, hey, do we have any other information? Can I share this? This is the exact content I want to share with our students. Check up. Don't just post things off the fly or because you've heard it. Check, verify, get authorization, then move forward in those situations. Platforming is another one to be careful of. So picking back on the example I gave earlier of our outdoor recreation center, this is something I've had to stop them a couple of times and intervene with their account. The folks that are in that community, very, very big on preservation of natural resources, sustainable efforts. There was a poll and engagement piece about getting involved in saving the Snake River dams. And it was a very partisan piece. And for us, as a public institution, we're not in a place to promote or take sides. If there was a discussion, a open forum, for example, great, promote that, get your folks there. We don't take sides. And that's our practice here at WSU, is that we stay away from where the university can be seen taking a side in a social issue. Those are things that we have to be very, very wary of. And so that's something I've had to pause them a few times and say, hey, we got to take this down. Not really our place to say this. So just something to be wary of. Not generating enough content of value. Make sure that your content, once again, it needs to tie back to who you are and those values. If you post anything, share anything, and it is not copacetic with the values of your hall, your department, your university, you are doing something wrong. And that's typically where somebody gets into trouble on social media, is because they go outside the values of their organization. So always keep in mind, as you post this, ask the question, when you're checking your spelling, make sure everything's and your grammar is correct, just pause and say, does this reflect the values of whom I'm posting for? So, and that will hedge a lot of issues that can come up in social media. Okay, last couple are pretty quick. Getting caught behind a desk. The key is get out there. We're working with students. We want to share the student experience. And so from time to time, I usually have to wrangle and harangue some folks to be like, no, get away from your desk. Don't just keep posting photos that we've taken in the past and sharing information. Get out there, capture the student experience, be with the students, find out what they're doing, how they're engaging. It's a great opportunity to do just some straw polling in the field, but it's an opportunity to really share that genuine, authentic experience. And so making sure that if you're running an account, you get out from behind the desk and posting at a computer, but go take your phone, your tablet, and really engage, mingle, and then post and share. And that makes a lot more meaningful content because other people will see themselves in it. They will tag it, they will share it, and be like, oh my God, totally check out me doing, this activity in our challenge course. They will eat that up. And their friends will see it, which is good marketing for us. So always make sure that you're getting out there. And then the last thing is just really keep in mind, as you're doing this, are you posting it as a department or as a personality? And be very mindful because they can sound very discordant from each other. And maybe your personality is, we're going to be the talking head department, and that's perfectly fine. And you're using a social media account as a communications tool, great. Then I would avoid putting anything really slapstick up there or very personal toned, if you will. So just always keep in mind, who are you posting as and what is the voice that you're using? Because discordancy also can erode at the credibility of your account. Whew. Okay, so I have talked for quite a while, and we're going to see if we have any questions. Kate just joined me back here in the room. Is there a questions platform or is it just all video webinar?
They're able to chat in questions.
Ooh, so if I go to stop. So first of all, thank you all for listening to me drone on here for the last little bit. If you do have questions, feel free to email me. My email address is up on the screen currently, kcants@wsu.edu. I'm more than happy to share resources that we have, help you talk through strategies, that kind of thing. So don't hesitate. Social media is a constant, ever-changing world, and we just try to stay in front of it to the best of our ability. So now I need advice on how to get, is there a questions pane or do I stop sharing?
So if you, I think Shelley will. No, it's probably me. I'm looking at you.
Hello, Shelley.
All right, so while we're looking for a couple of questions, I did want to just provide a few quick announcements, as I promised that there would be at the end of our webinar, really about the upcoming Northwest NWACUHO events. The first thing that I will say is that our annual conference is coming up in February, and it is going to be awesome. And so get ready to do that. Make sure that you are there. And the first thing that you need to do in order to get to the conference is make sure that you're registered to attend. Right now, we're still in the window of that early bird registration amount. And so this is a good opportunity for you today to go make sure that you're registered for the conference. And then while you're doing that, you may want to just check in either with your senior housing officer or kind of check around and make sure that your membership to Northwest NWACUHO has been updated. We actually, January is when we do institutional memberships. And so you're like, hey, in December, I think we were institutional members. Now is the time to update that. You can also follow the event on Facebook. Our communications director has been doing just a fantastic job of taking the wisdom that Kyle just shared with us and posting regularly. And they're pretty great posts, very informative, and they're funny and all that sort of stuff. So I encourage you, if you can, to follow those events on Facebook or follow the event on Facebook because there are updates pretty regularly there. And while you're there, hey, why not follow Northwest NWACUHO on Twitter as well? Because there's all sorts of great updates, both in relationship to the annual conference coming up in February, as well as the activities of the association. As soon as our guidebook app for our annual conference is posted, we'll make sure to share that. But that's where you can log in and start picking what kind of interest sessions you want to go to and who are the vendors that are going to be there that you really want to talk more to and all that sort of stuff. So we encourage you to, as soon as that's available, to download the guidebook app and kind of check that out. Finally, we encourage you to think about or nominate someone else to run for an executive board position. We have a number of opportunities available within our executive board this year and coming up and being elected at our annual conference in February. And we are looking for fantastic people such as yourselves to fill those needs. And so applications are actually due on January 12th. So that date is coming up. I think that's it for us here at Northwest NWACUHO. Thank you all so much for joining us for our first Friday webinar, the first one of 2018. Thank you so much, Kyle, for being here and presenting this information. I took lots of notes on the wisdom, so thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so long, everyone.